The billionaire's girlfriend snapped her fingers, and the whole restaurant went silent. The waitress didn't fight back, didn't argue, didn't even flinch. But behind that calm smile, something had shifted. By the next morning, the same waitress was signing papers that would change everything. No one knew yet. She wasn't the one being dismissed. She was the one taking control. Amara had been working at Langford's fine dining for only 3 weeks, but it already felt like a lifetime. The place was quiet, elegant, and full of people who never looked at the waiters long enough to remember their faces. Every night she stood on her tired feet for hours, pretending not to hear the laughter, the gossip, or the way rich guests complained about small things like the shine on a glass or the warmth of their soup. She wasn't new to hard work. She had done everything from cleaning offices to selling coffee at bus stations. But this job was different. Here, she wore a white shirt, a dark apron, and a name tag that made her feel visible for the first time. Yet she also knew visibility could be dangerous, because when people saw you, they could choose to look down on you too. Her life outside the restaurant was small and quiet. She lived in a one-room apartment with thin walls and a noisy ceiling fan. Every morning she took the bus across town, reading job ads on her phone and hoping for something better. Her dream was simple: a stable life, her own place someday, and maybe enough money to send home to her mother. That Friday evening, the restaurant was busier than usual. The air smelled like roasted garlic and wine. Amara moved between tables with steady hands, even when her legs ached. Around 8 p.m., the hostess called out, "Table 12, Mr. Langford's reservation." Everyone in the room went quiet for a second. Evan Langford, the billionaire investor, the man whose name was printed on the restaurant menu itself. He owned the chain. His face was in business magazines, his words quoted like wisdom. The staff whispered that when he came in, you had to be perfect. No mistakes, no noise, no delay. Amara's manager, nervous and sweating, rushed to greet him. "Good evening, Mr. Langford. Table 12 is ready." Evan nodded politely and walked in with a woman beside him. Tall, beautiful, and dressed like she had never touched something ordinary in her life. Talia Grayson, his girlfriend. She was a model and social media star, the kind who smiled for cameras but frowned at people. Amara noticed the change in the air as soon as they sat down. The other guests whispered and the staff moved faster. Amara was assigned to serve their table. She checked her reflection in the kitchen door. Hair neat, collar straight, hands clean, and carried the water tray out. When she reached them, Talia didn't even glance up. She was scrolling through her phone, nails painted silver. "Water," she said flatly. "Still, not tap." Amara nodded. "Of course, ma'am." But before she could turn away, Talia snapped her fingers. Snap. "Now!" The sound echoed. A few people turned their heads. Amara froze for half a second, then quickly poured the water. She kept her face calm, though she felt a small sting in her chest. Evan looked uncomfortable but said nothing. As the evening went on, the small humiliations piled up. Talia complained that her soup was cold, then too hot, then that Amara's presence made her feel watched. When Amara tried to refill her glass, Talia waved her hand sharply and said, "Don't hover." Amara said softly, "Sorry, ma'am," and stepped back. She tried not to let her voice shake. She had dealt with rude customers before, but something about Talia's tone, the casual cruelty, the way she made insults sound like music, was worse than anything she'd faced before. Halfway through dinner, Talia leaned close to Evan and said loudly, "I swear, these girls think wearing a uniform makes them important." Then she looked right at Amara. "You practiced that fake smile in the mirror, didn't you?" The table nearby went silent. Even the pianist paused mid-song. Evan frowned. "Talia, enough." She laughed softly and snapped her fingers again. "Sweetheart, relax. It's cute. She probably enjoys the attention." Amara's throat tightened. Her hand shook slightly as she placed the dessert on the table. Her cheeks burned, but she didn't let her anger show. Instead, she stood a little taller and said calmly, "Enjoy your evening." Then she walked away. In the kitchen, the other waiters looked at her with quiet sympathy. No one said anything, but everyone knew. Talia had gone too far. Amara washed her hands slowly, staring at the sink. She felt her heart racing, not from shame this time, but from resolve. Something inside her had changed. She didn't know what she would do yet, but she knew this. She would not stay small forever. Outside, laughter continued, glasses clinked, and music played. But Amara no longer heard it. She only heard her own heartbeat steady and strong as she whispered to herself, "One day, this will not be my place." She didn't know how true those words would become, or how soon. The next morning, Amara woke up before sunrise. The fan rattled above her bed, and a weak light slipped through the thin curtain. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, replaying last night's scene in her head. Every sound came back clearly: the laughter, the snap of Talia's fingers, the quiet shame that had filled her chest like smoke. She should have cried, but she didn't. Instead, she felt strangely calm, as if her mind had already made peace with something she couldn't yet name. She dressed quietly, buttoned her white shirt, tied her hair into a neat bun, and checked her shoes. They were old but clean. Then she looked at herself in the mirror, smiled faintly, and said under her breath, "One more day." When she reached the restaurant, something was different. People whispered as she passed. The air felt heavy, almost watchful. Her friend Mira, another waitress, hurried over and whispered, "Amara, the manager's been looking for you." "He got a call from corporate this morning. They said it's urgent." Amara blinked. "Did they say why?" Mira shook her head. "No, but everyone thinks it's about last night." Talia complained, maybe. "You should have seen the manager's face. He looks terrified." Amara didn't answer. She hung her bag in the staff room and straightened her apron. Inside, she could feel a tightness in her chest, but outside she looked steady, almost peaceful. She had learned long ago that panic never helped. People expected workers like her to cry, beg, explain, but she would do none of that. At exactly 9 o'clock, the manager called her name. "Amara, can you come to the office, please?" When she walked in, 2 men in suits were standing beside the desk. They looked official, cold and serious. One held a large envelope with a gold seal on it. The manager avoided her eyes. One of the men said, "Miss Amara D'Souza." "Yes," she replied quietly. He held out the envelope. "We're here on behalf of Langford Enterprises. You are requested to sign these papers immediately." The manager cleared his throat. "I'm sorry, Amara. It's out of my hands." For a moment, the room felt very small. She could hear the hum of the ceiling fan, the faint clinking of dishes outside, even her own heartbeat. She looked at the envelope, then at the men. "May I read it first?" she asked. "Of course," one replied. She opened it slowly and scanned the first few pages. The words blurred a little, but she caught a few: transfer, signature, effective immediately. She kept her face still. Everyone in the room watched her, expecting tears or confusion. Instead, she picked up the pen on the table, signed her name neatly at the bottom, and handed it back. "Thank you," she said. The men nodded, gathered their papers, and left. The manager sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry, Amara, you've been good here." "Really good." "It's okay, sir," she said softly. "Thank you for the chance." Then she walked out of the office, her steps calm, her posture straight. But the moment she left, the whispering began again. "She's fired. Talia must have complained. I knew it. No one talks back to those people and keeps their job." Mira caught up to her near the coffee station. "Amara, what did they say?" "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Amara replied, smiling faintly. "Don't worry," but inside she was thinking. The papers hadn't looked like normal termination papers. There had been too many pages, too many sections that didn't match what she'd seen other employees sign when they were fired. Something about it didn't feel right. Still, she said nothing. She finished her shift quietly, helping a new waiter learn the tray balance, fixing a misprinted bill, checking on guests with her usual politeness. By noon, everyone had accepted that she was gone. The manager even started looking for a replacement. Amara didn't correct them. She just kept doing her work until the end of the lunch rush. Then at 1 o'clock, the front door opened, and silence fell across the restaurant. A black SUV had stopped outside, and through the glass doors, everyone saw Evan Langford stepping out alone. No security, no assistant, no Talia. He looked serious, tired, and distant. The hostess stuttered when she tried to greet him, but he didn't respond. He walked straight past the tables, past the bar, until he stopped right in front of Amara, who was wiping a table near the window. "Miss D'Souza," he said quietly. "May we speak privately?" The room went completely still. Even the music seemed to fade. Amara nodded once and followed him toward the office. People stared as the door closed behind them. Inside, Evan exhaled, his shoulders dropping slightly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I owe you an apology." Amara stayed silent, her hands folded neatly in front of her. "What happened last night," he continued, "was wrong. Deeply wrong. I saw it and I did nothing. I should have stopped her." Amara looked at him, her expression calm. "You don't have to explain, sir." "I think I do." He opened the briefcase he was carrying and took out a few folders. "You see, Talia crossed a line. Not just with you, but with what she's become. She treats people as decorations, props. I realized last night that I can't keep building my life or my business around that kind of behavior." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The papers you signed this morning, they weren't termination papers." Amara frowned slightly. "They weren't?" He shook his head. "They were transfer papers. You've been moved to Langford Estates, one of our headquarters. Starting today, you'll be the operations supervisor there. You'll oversee restaurant coordination, staff training, and client management. I've been looking for someone who's steady under pressure. Last night I saw that person." For a moment, Amara didn't move. The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's story. She blinked slowly. "You saw what happened?" Evan nodded. "All of it. I was ashamed, to be honest. I let it happen because I didn't want to make a scene. But silence can hurt more than words. I can't undo last night, but I can make something right today." He pushed the folder toward her. Inside were ID forms, a contract, and an appointment letter with her name printed neatly at the top. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the paper. She looked up at him, eyes searching his face. "Why me?" "Because," he said, "you didn't lose your grace even when you were insulted. Most people, even powerful ones, can't do that. You reminded me of something I used to respect. Dignity." There was a long pause. The office was quiet except for the faint hum of traffic outside. Finally, Amara gave a small smile. "Then I suppose I'm not the one who got terminated today." Evan's lips curved into a faint smile, too. "No," he said, pulling out another envelope and sliding it across the table. "That would be Talia." Amara hesitated before opening it. Inside was a printed memo titled Termination of Partnership. Talia Grayson. She looked up slowly. Evan spoke softly. "She'll find another brand to use for her photos. I, on the other hand, need people I can trust. I hope you'll accept the position." Amara nodded. "I will, sir." He stood, straightened his tie, and said quietly, "Good. Then I'll see you Monday at the estate's office." He offered a hand. She shook it firmly. For the first time, she realized his handshake wasn't the handshake of a billionaire. It was just a human one. When they stepped back into the main hall, every eye turned to them. The manager looked confused, the staff silent. Evan glanced at him and said, "I'll be taking Miss D'Souza off your roster. She's been promoted." Effective immediately. The manager's jaw dropped. "Promoted?" Evan gave a short nod, then turned to leave. Sent her final paperwork to HR. The moment the door closed behind him, whispers erupted again, but this time they sounded different. Shock, disbelief, and a touch of admiration filled the room. Mira ran to Amara. "Amara!" What just happened?" He said, "Promoted?" Amara smiled softly. "Yes, it looks like I'll be working somewhere else now." The manager came forward, still stunned. I don't understand. You're leaving us?" Amara nodded politely. "Yes, sir. But thank you for everything I learned here." She returned her apron, cleaned her last table, and gathered her things from the locker. The staff crowded around her, some congratulating, others still trying to make sense of what had just happened. Mira hugged her tightly. "You deserve this." "You really do," Amara smiled. "Maybe, or maybe it just proves that sometimes people do see who you are even when they pretend not to." She walked toward the exit slowly, her steps light. Outside, the black SUV was still parked by the curb, the driver waiting. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like a servant leaving work. She felt like someone stepping into her own story. As the car door closed behind her, she looked out through the tinted glass. The restaurant where she had been humiliated just last night grew smaller and smaller as they drove away. The city passed by, shops, buses, faces, but everything looked clearer now. She thought of her mother, of all the nights she had told her, Keep your head high even when others try to bend it down. Maybe this was what she meant. Amara leaned back and closed her eyes. She wasn't thinking about revenge or victory. She was thinking about peace, the quiet kind that comes when you finally know your worth. In another part of the city, Talia's perfect world was beginning to crumble. Her phone kept buzzing, messages, calls, and news alerts. The headlines spread fast. Evan Langford ends partnership with model Talia Grayson. Her sponsorships paused, her followers turned cold, and her smile, once her greatest weapon, no longer fooled anyone. She scrolled through comments that once praised her beauty, but now questioned her character. People who once clapped for her now looked away. She had spent years teaching the world to worship her image, but now that image was cracking. One post at a time, karma had a quiet way of working. It didn't shout or rush, it simply waited, and when it arrived, it looked like justice disguised as consequence. Talia sat in her luxury apartment staring at the screen. It's just a phase, she told herself. But deep down she knew, this time, no amount of charm could fix what arrogance had broken. Meanwhile, Amara's world was changing too, but differently. Not with fame or noise, but with peace. Her life was still simple, her apartment still small, but her heart was light. She had no anger left for Talia, no bitterness, just understanding. People had always told Amara that power belonged to the loud, the bold, the rich. But now she knew the truth. Power belongs to those who stay kind, even when the world turns cruel. It belongs to those who rise above humiliation without losing their humanity. As she looked out of the window, she thought about everything that had happened. The snapping fingers, the whispers, the silence she had held onto when others would have shouted. Back then that silence had felt like weakness, but now she realized it had been her strength. Because silence is not the same as surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. It is the calm before your life changes direction. Amara smiled softly. Funny, she whispered, how life gives people back exactly what they hand out. Talia had used her power to belittle. Amara had used her pain to grow. One had lost everything built on pride. The other had gained everything built on patience. In that moment, Amara understood something deeper. Life isn't fair every day, but it always finds its balance in time. The tables don't stay turned forever. The same hand that snaps at others one day might find itself begging for a little grace the next. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The city noise faded into the distance. Her heart felt light, like she had finally put down a weight she'd been carrying for years. Her phone buzzed once. It was a message from Mira. You deserve everything good coming your way. I'm proud of you, Amara smiled, typing back a simple reply. Thank you. Maybe this was never about luck. Maybe it was about faith. She placed her phone down and let her thoughts wander. She remembered the faces of other workers she'd met over the years. The cleaners, the cooks, the receptionists. All the people who stayed invisible so others could shine. People like her. She wished they could see what she now knew, that their worth had never been small. It was just waiting for the right moment to be seen. Somewhere across town, Talia sat in her living room surrounded by silence. No friends calling, no flashes from cameras, no smiles waiting to feed her ego. The world she once ruled was gone, and for the first time she had no one left to look down on. Maybe this was her lesson, to learn humility in the same way Amara had learned strength, because that's how karma works. It doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it simply teaches. Weeks later, when people mentioned the restaurant incident, no one talked about Talia's beauty or fame. They talked about the waitress, the calm one, the one who didn't fight back but still walked away stronger. And that was enough for Amara. She didn't need revenge. She had growth. Before sleeping, she whispered softly to herself, "The best revenge is becoming someone you can be proud of." She smiled, turned off the lights, and lay down. Outside, the city hummed gently, as if singing her a quiet lullaby of peace. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was hers now, and that made all the difference. Sometimes life tests you by putting you in front of people who think you're nothing, not to break you, but to show you who you really are. Amara's story reminds us that grace under pressure is a kind of power the world rarely understands. Karma doesn't come fast. It comes quiet, slow, and exact. And when it does, you'll realize the people who tried to humiliate you only pushed you closer to your destiny. So, if someone has ever looked down on you, remember this. You don't have to shout to prove your worth. Keep working, keep standing tall. Let success be your reply. Because one day, the same people who underestimated you will see your name, not as a footnote, but as a headline. And when that day comes, you won't need to snap your fingers. Life will already be applauding for you. Have you ever faced something like Amara did, staying silent when someone tried to humiliate you? What did you learn from it? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight?